two verses that Master recite before teaching, giving a teaching. This ke chunta sha. In the prayer called May the Dharma flourish at all times, there's one of the lines says, the Buddha attained enlightenment after engaging in practiced compassion and taking care, working for the benefit of sentient beings for eons, engaging in the practice of method and wisdom, and finally attaining enlightened. And the prayer says, due to the power of that, may my Dharma last for a long time. So therefore, the Buddha generally has many Buddha body, speech and mind qualities, but his main quality is his quality of compassion and love. We have already talked a lot about that in the last few days. So the Buddha has the Buddha and his. It is said that the Buddha Dharma is a teaching system, a Dharma system of compassion, based on compassion. So therefore, the Bodhisattva path is one of the main body of the path to Buddhahood. So in order to attain enlightenment, the path, combination of bodhicitta and compassion, rooted in compassion and the non-dual wisdom. So these are the fundamental, the primary path, method, or the paths to attain enlightenment. So now in this Ratnavali text also we will come through practice of bodhicitta, the perfections, and the most especially the practice of exchanging oneself and others, and then the text which specializes in explaining the compassion, the practice of compassion, is Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya, where it is said that all the good things in this world comes from the practice of compassion. All the negative things in this world, in the samsara, are results of negative actions, self-cherishing mind. If we look at in this world, from big international wars, global, down to conflicts inside families, all inauspicious things arise from self-cherishing mind. Even in one single family, if we want have harmony, happiness, trust, fun, up to global level harmony and peace And then not only this life, happiness and harmony in future lives, and ultimately, as the mantra Teata Gade Gade Paragade Parasamgade Buddhiso shows, to attain the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing and meditation, and finally attaining Buddhahood. All these things arise from the practice, from engaging in the practice of cherishing others. So if one one verse says that if one is always cherishes oneself, then let alone enlightenment and liberation, even in this life alone, one will not never enjoy enjoy life and experience happiness. Always there will be conflict, unhappiness, pain, misery, and so on. So therefore, the practice of bodhicitta, which has two causes, there's two which comes with two aspirations: the aspiration to liberate all sentient beings, and to the aspiration to attain enlightenment for the sake of liberating all sentient beings. So in one of the commentaries to Prajnaparamita Sutras, it is said that compassion compassion sort of looks at sentient beings as its object, whereas wisdom holds the state of Buddhahood as its object. There's still a large portion of the Ratnavali that we haven't finished. So since there's not much time, His Honor says he wouldn't be able to explain too much, but he will just, whenever he comes across an important verse, then he will explain a little bit. Otherwise, he will just read out. So we just began with chapter 2. Chapter 2 of Ratnavali. The first verse, just as nothing exists when all parts of a plantain tree are removed, so is the case of a person when its constituents are all removed. So the second verse, which says, all phenomena are without self. This is the victorious one. This the victorious. Stanza 3. As self and selflessness are not truly to be found, so in the Prajnaparamita Sutras, there are explanations on different categories of emptiness, like four emptiness. So like 8 kind of emptiness, and emptiness of emptiness, like that. So emptiness itself is same. So this is something one has to think about well. when we analyze the object, we cannot find it. And we find that it is the object lacks inherent existence, which is emptiness. But there's possibility that when you don't find an object and sees lack of inherent existence, which is emptiness, then some people might think the lack of inherent existence is itself an inherent truth, because that was what was found at the end. So this is what is being trying to refute here. Even the ultimate truth that was found is also empty of inherent existence. So when we say something is untrue, the untrue is itself a truth. That's what people might think. So that is not, this is the text is explaining, this is a wrong view. What is found, which is the illusion or the untrue nature of phenomena, is itself untrue. So we are in chapter stanza 8. Yes. Stanza 11, like no, did it? Likewise, in an illusion-like world. Okay, stanza 12. An illusory elephant comes from nowhere, nor goes anywhere. Being merely a mental delusion, it does not ultimately exist. Stanza 13. Likewise, an illusion-like world comes from nowhere, nor goes anywhere. Being merely a mental delusion, it does not ultimately exist. Stanza 14. Aside from a transcending the three times and being a mere designation, how could this world, whether existent or non-existent, ultimately exist? Stanza 15. The Buddha, for this reason, refused to comment on the four aspects of finitude and infinitude, and both and neither. Stanza 7. Even, he only says, even subtle impermanence. If we don't analyze, think deeply, we won't understand, because we may have a general view that we may think generally everything is impermanent, but deep down there is something permanent. So this is a sort of a view that we may have. So even this is not true. Even at the subtlest level, all material phenomena, things are impermanent. Stanza 19. If Dharma is misunderstood, it ruins the unwise. By holding nihilistic views, they drown in the unclean states. Also due to inconceiving incorrectly, fools, presuming the pride of a learned and driven by their flawed denial, plummet headlong into the hell of no respite. There's also a possibility that we accept selflessness, dependent arising, and doesn't accept creator. So we may think they accept dependent arising. But if you accept, if you believe that the person who experiences the object is a singular permanent self, then the person still hasn't understood well the subtle dependent arising. So even though there are some people who accept dependent arising, but still people there's possibility that there are some schools we believe that ultimately there's independent self. Score. Stanza 23. So it's saying emptiness is not an easy stuff. It is something you have to think very deeply, profoundly, over a long period. Also make supplications to your master, guru master, and to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and slowly one has to gain some experience into the meaning and develop appreciation for this profound truth. Stanza 24th, stanza 25th. Stanza 25th, His Holiness says, even if one cannot gain a good appreciation of emptiness immediately, first one has to engage in the practice of generosity, ethics, and so on, which will give one confidence and one's merit to eventually understand the meaning of emptiness. Stanza 26, a king who puts Dharma before any action, retains Dharma in the middle and follows it at an end, shall encounter no harm in this and the subsequent lives. So this is an advice, since this is an advice to the king, the text says, if you want to live a religious life, you have to act in such a way that you act virtuously in the beginning, middle, and end. And if you do that, you will be happy yourself, others will be happy in this life, in the next life, and ultimately you will be happy. Standard 27, standard 28. Stanza 29. 30. Worthless knowledge is a road to bad rebirth. How can one with unruly wisdom and irrevocably bent on deceiving others understand the worthiness of Dharma? Stanza 31. How can someone disposed to deceiving others be an observer of true approach? Because even after thousands of rebirths, it only leads to self-deception in many ways. Stanza 32. So here the text is stanza 33 is talking about higher rebirth. The 8 qualities His Holiness says, I think he said he's like generosity, speaking pleasantly, being helpful, practicing appropriately will help gather worldly excellence and Dharma as well. So the text says we have to be honest, don't lie, don't be deceptive. In the general conception in this world is that if somebody is deceptive, people consider that person as an very capable person. These are very wrong views. Because of such perceptions in this world, even though everybody desires happiness, everybody lacks happiness. Just like Shantideva said in his Bodhisattva Charya, no matter how much happiness we desire, we always get unhappiness. Whether we listen to news or watch television news, or listen to someone's conversation, the subject is all about inauspicious things, bad news, sad things, tragedies. For example, instead we talk to children, it's more enjoyable because they talk straightforward, honest, innocent. Once I was in Switzerland in pathology. There are children from Palestine, Israel, and these children were playing with each other, have very innocent. But the problem is, as they grow up, then they get these notions of race, religion, wealthy, poverty, rich and poor. All these divisions, concept of divisions, arise in their mind. So this shows that at the bottom level, we are as social animals, we have this intrinsic natural tendency of love and compassion. This is something biological. It's a biologically given gift. So the altruistic mind quality that we have, which is innate to us and biologically innate to us, we have to cultivate and develop that more and more in our adult life. And if we can do that, this will be key to world peace and happy life. So just like I said just now, this verse from Shantideva, even though we desire happiness, we always engage in acts that leads to unhappiness, like such as fighting, telling lies, deceiving people, so on. So instead, if we show respect to others, tolerance, love and compassion, then happiness will automatically come. But we do otherwise. Even though we want happiness, we destroy the cause of happiness, just like as if it is our enemy. Stanza 35. Mere absence of falsity is not truth, for falsity is not what pure mind generates. Whatever solely benefits others is truth, while those not beneficial are in fact not. Stanza 36. Just as the faults of a king are acquitted by a single act of generosity, so does his avarice obliterate the qualities he may have accomplished. So the text is talking about leadership, honesty, far-sighted, unbiased. If you don't have selflessness, altruism, and not honest, then no one believes the leader anymore, because eventually everybody will know the truth. So the text is saying one has to be all the time transparent, honest, and then one also needs vision, farsightedness. So if you are thinking about the future, it's important not to think from one side only. You have to look from all sides and then make a decision, which is what is called vision and farsightedness. That's what is being said here by Nagarjuna. '39. A ruler with four excellences, truth, generosity, tranquility, and wisdom, will be like the four excellent dharmas, praised by gods and humans alike. Stanza 40, stanza 41. Those who speak beneficially are rare. Those who listen are extremely rare. Yet rarer are those who, despite all reproofs, immediately acts to benefit others. Stanza 42. Stanza 43. So stanza 43 is talking about the causes of lower realms and impermanence. Stanza 44, 45, 46 talks about the disadvantages of being a drinker. 47 talks about gambling, the negative consequences of gambling. Gambling is the cause of desire and sadness, hatred, pretension, denial, distraction, lying, pride, and harsh speech. Therefore, always remain in abstention. 48 talks about sexual misconduct, what do you call sexual craving. So it says, if you embrace this, our sexual, biologically arising sexual temptations. So since Nagarjuna is addressing his friend who is a male, therefore he's talking about being sort of attracted to the opposite sex, which is female, and its negative consequences. If the advice is given to a female, then the advice should be to the negative consequences of falling in, feeling attracted to male opposite partners. So therefore, here it's about the negative consequences of being attracted to female beings. So this is something we have to know. This is the context is very important. The text is not being biased by talking about the disadvantages, the negative consequences of being attracted to female. It's only sort of talking in terms of the context. So it's 48 says, desire for women mostly arises from the thought of women's body as being beautiful. In reality, however, there is nothing clean in a woman's body. 49, how her mouth is a vessel of putrid saliva and repulsive dental plaque. Her nose is full of mucus, snot, and fluids, while eyes are containers of tears and dirt. 50, inside her belly are excrement and urine, and sacs for the lungs, liver, and the rest. Not seeing a woman as such, out of ignorance, one thus craves for her body. Just as a few unwise are attached to be bejeweled ways of filth, so do worldly beings out of ignorance feel the same towards women. In other words, the text talks about the 36 in sort of dirty ingredients. We have to eat in order to survive. And then the byproducts are, sort of thrown out of our anal and sort of our body. So the substance that sustains our body are themselves dirty. So if we are feeling attached to the opposite sex due to sort of not understanding the dirty, impure constituents of our body, then meditating on these things would help. Stanza 59. Stanza 60. Stanza 62. It's continuing to talk about the impure nature of the human body. In this case, in this context, the body of a female person. Stanza 66. Stanza 67. Stanza 68. So stanza 68 says, it says, out of sexual desire, if we engage in sexual activity, there is an immediate sort of gratification. But think about the consequences. All the troubles, generally what we call love towards the opposite sex, we should classify that into two. A biologically driven love that is a biased love. The biologically arisen love is a biased love. It depends on how the opposite person sort of appears to you or reacts to you. So this kind of love is more it's more close, that is more biased towards the close circle of people which surrounds you, like your loved ones. Now, the other kind of love that is mentioned in most religions, that love does not depend so much on the reaction the opposite person response or the response or reaction. In other words, response you get from the opposite people in return to the love you show them. But but rather this second love is sort of directed towards the person himself rather than his response. So this kind of love is more universal. It doesn't depend on whether the opposite person responds to you kindly or unkindly, or is thankful to the other people, are thankful to you or not. For example, we love ourselves because we want happiness. We do not want unhappiness. So we now turn that around and look at all sentient beings in that perspective. All sentient beings want happiness and do not want unhappiness. So this kind of love can be universal love, independent of whether the other sentient beings are responsive to your love or not. So animals cannot do that because they lack the intelligence faculty. So this is a distinction we must make. Whether it's Islam, Christianity, all those theistic religions. Also talks about universal love. They say all human beings are children of God, and so they direct universal love towards all human beings. And whereas Buddhists also sort of practice universal love on the basis of this logic that just as one wants happiness, all sentient beings want happiness and do not want unhappiness. So now what we can do is, what we should do is take this biologically driven love as the seed, as the potential, and then cultivate it into a more logically based universal love. So let's talk about the globe, the earth, the world. The southern hemisphere depends on the northern hemisphere. The eastern hemisphere depends on the western hemisphere, and back and forth, vice versa. So if we think in this kind of interdependent nature of our global human family, then our whole, even today's scientists say that fear, hatred, such emotions kills our immune system. On the other hand, if we have love and altruistic emotions, the immune systems sustains better. So this is really true. From this point of view also, the spontaneous human nature, we can say, is being is compassionate, loving, kindness. If we can sustain these qualities, they can contribute to our health, hygiene, and even our longevity.
So even with regard to our sexual desire, may give some satisfaction, but then ultimately it gives problems. So we have this biological desire, which of course gives some pleasure, but then it also gives rise to jealousy and a competitive feeling and so forth. And so what we are talking about when we say we need love is the universal kind of love, and particularly a love which can extend to our enemies, adversaries. So because someone actually is adverse to you, we call them enemies. And so if you have love, then universal love, then you can actually feel, think of or wish your own enemy to have happiness. Verse number 69. 70 short life, fear, suffering, rebirth in hell come from the dreadful cause, as their crew through hunting of animals always remain steadfast in avoiding killing. And so in the past, the Indian kings used to hunt animals, and then they also display the head of the animal in their own palace and so forth. So perhaps this is advice against that. Like a snake spurting venom and with parts of covered in filth, so despicable are those that embodied beings. As huge rain clouds drift by, it brings joy to the farmers and so forth. So what you need to do is you should do things which actually please and delight everyone. So the subjects, for example, should feel that the king is their hope and they can trust him. So likewise, admirable are those in whom worldly beings take delight. And then verse number 73 down shows the methods for definite goodness. Which starts with saying, therefore refrain from non-virtues and resolutely engage in virtue. If you and the world develops a wish to attain and surpass enlightenment, know that its root cause are bodhicitta, that is as firm as king of mountains, compassion that reaches all limits, and wisdom that does not rest in duality. And so with regard to cultivation of bodhicitta, there are two systems or methods. One is the sevenfold cause and effect instruction, and then the other is equaling and exchanging self and others. For those practitioners with sharp faculty who are bright, then the second method is followed. So such a practitioner wishes to lead others to liberation and enlightenment, and therefore for that reason they wish to become enlightened for themselves. And so this kind of bodhicitta, this awakening mind, comes through compassion, and particularly the compassion where you actually want to save other sentient beings and from suffering and its causes. And in order for that kind of wish and determination to happen, you need to have the understanding of emptiness. And so for the practitioners of sharper faculty, they need first to develop the understanding and insight into emptiness, and in order to develop bodhicitta. And not only that, also for to have a very strong principle of taking refuge, thought of taking refuge in the three jewels. They need to understand emptiness, because you need to understand what the nirvana and cessation and all these are. And so in the 400 verses, Master Aryadeva says that in order to understand the obscure subjects that are taught by the Buddha, one needs to understand emptiness. And therefore, in Pramana Vartika, it is said that because the Buddha is not reliable, or is not controvertible in terms of the main teaching, therefore the other teachings should be inferred from there. So with reason and logic, we can actually prove the the experiences of the Four Noble Truths and so forth. And then once you understand that, you can also understand that the higher spiritual attainments can also be possible. And then there are teachings which are very obscure to us, where the Buddha says, oh, such and such things will happen in the future, like making prophecies, and also the very, the subtlest aspect of karmic working are very obscure to us, extremely obscure phenomena to us, and therefore, by understanding the main teaching pertaining to enlightenment, omniscient state of Buddhahood, which can be called proved through reason. And once you understand emptiness, then you will be able to see that it is possible for us to eliminate our negative emotions together with the stains, the residual stains, and become an omniscient one. And therefore, generally speaking, you can see how enlightenment and Buddhahood are possible, are possibilities, and in general, and particularly that they are possibilities for us to attain them. And therefore, once you are able to prove these things through reason, then you will be able to see the truth in the teaching which deals with the very hidden subjects. And therefore, in order to see the truth in these very obscure subject matters of the teachings, we should see that those teachings are incontrovertible in terms of three aspects. What the Buddha has taught in terms of what is obvious to us, that there is no contradiction in that, and then what is taught about with regard to things which are slightly obscure to us. And then finally, we can see that infer the very hidden phenomena also to be true, called true. So, of course, those who are of inferior faculty can generate and cultivate bodhicitta through an effort and through imagination and with wish. And so the main disciple of the Buddhas are, with regard to this kind of practice of bodhicitta, are those with sharper faculty. And so compassion that reaches all limits means universal compassion, and then wisdom that does not rest in duality. And so with regard to such bodhicitta that is generated by those with sharp faculty, the most important thing for them to cultivate first is the view of emptiness. So how do we go about the actual practice whereby we cultivate it? First, we need to do the practice is based on pertaining to how we can attain higher rebirths, which are conducive for Dharma practice, over and over again. And then we should also understand how to understand and cultivate the path which leads us from higher rebirth to liberation. And therefore, here the teaching actually goes through teaching first on the higher rebirth and then the definite goodness, liberation. And in the 400 verses also, it is said that first, we need to do away with non-meritorious karmas or actions which lead us to lower realms of existence. So that is the first step that we should take for higher rebirth, in order to attain higher rebirth. And then Aryadeva goes on to say, in the middle, we should get rid of grasping at self. And here, grasping at self is the grasping at self of a person, an individual, a person. which refers to overcoming all negative emotions, the destructive emotions or kleshas. And okay. And so then having attained the path leading to higher rebirth and called definite goodness, having trained in this path, then you actually dedicate yourself for the benefit of others. And in order to be able to attain the final goal, ultimate goal, you need to develop this understanding of emptiness. And so Arya Deva's line where, in the 400 verses where he continues saying that in the end one should get rid of all the wrong views, refers to understanding emptiness, the lack of independent existence and things. So in the Lamrim, the graduated path to enlightenment, there's a way of leading disciples by teaching on the preciousness and the rarity of difficulty in finding higher rebirth, and then the impermanence nature of such a higher rebirth, human life, and so forth, and then our karma, and then taking refuge in the three jewels. So the actual teaching of the Buddha should be given in such a way that the people, the disciples, understand the truth of Dharma, and called the cessation, and then on the basis of understanding that the possibility that there's the possibility of attaining nirvana and enlightenment, then you should lead them into the other practices. And so one should introduce first liberation or nirvana, and then having introduced it, then let the disciples to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and then in order to be able to do that well, then you should give teachings on the preciousness of this human life, and to overcome the attachment to the pleasures of this life, and then to let them to overcome the pleasures of the attachment to the pleasures of next life, and so forth. So otherwise, without seeing reason for taking refuge, and of course, even it would be like following atheistic religions, who also have single-pointed faith in their own God or the Creator. And so they have such an intense and powerful and strong sense of taking refuge in their own God. And when they do so, they even shed tears. And so, with regards to overcoming the attaining higher rebirth, there is a teaching on the 10 virtuous actions, which is to say, to abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous actions, the morality of abstaining from these 10 non-virtuous actions, which are like common to even the non-Buddhist traditions, except with regard to the wrong view, which could be interpreted according to the different religious traditions themselves. And therefore, first give teachings on the two truths to introduce the liberation, and see understanding, develop the understanding of selflessness, and then see the truth of the teaching and the cessation and so forth, and then one can see the truth in the truth of the teacher and the Sangha. And then one can lead the disciples to understanding of, through the teachings on the preciousness of this life and the human life and so forth. The preciousness of human life and the rarity of finding such a human life, which is said in the three principal aspects of the path. And so Master Tsongkhapa goes through the teaching of called overcoming attachment to this life and attachment to the next pleasures of next life, and then he goes on the basis of that he teaches how to develop the true determination to be free from samsara, and then goes into the teaching of the bodhicitta. And then verse number 75 down shows the 32 major marks and of the Buddha. Oh, great king, listen carefully as to how your body can be adorned with the 32 major marks of an excellent being. So, of course, a king's body has come about or through a huge merit. And how do you go about with the practices which lead to attaining such marks? By worshipping reliquaries, sacred objects, exalted beings and elders. Your glorious hands and feet will have marks of a wheel, indicating your becoming a universal monarch. O king, always remain firm in your cultivation of Dharma. Through this you shall become a bodhisattva and have evenly formed feet. By giving, speaking pleasantly, helping others, and working agreeably, your hands will have beautiful lines and glorious fingers joined by webs. By giving good food and drinks in huge abundance, your glorious hands and feet will become nimble and shall have a great body with 7 parts graced prominently. By renouncing violence and saving lives, you will have a body beautiful, straight and tall. You'll enjoy long life and have long fingers and broad heels too. By preaching the Dharma you practice, you shall have charisma and a clear complexion. The ankles of your feet will not protrude, while signs of hair growing upwards will be seen. By receiving and imparting knowledge on philosophy, art, others respectfully, you will have the shanks of an inner deer and shall become wise and highly learned. By engaging in unyielding practice of giving away wealth and riches whenever besought, you will have broad and healthy hands and become the world's perfect protector. By helping to reconcile between estranged relatives and friends, the glory of having secret organs retracted within will therefore well ensue. By giving mansions and seats equally comfortable and cozy, one's complexion will be like stainless gold and shall be extremely smooth in texture. By conferring unexcelled authority and following one's seniors, you will have beautiful single-strained hair and a face adorned with a beautiful mole of coiled hairs. By speaking pleasantly, delightfully, and politely, and acting upon one's elegant speeches, the point of shoulders will be round, and the points of your shoulders will be round, and the torso will be like lines. By serving the sick and nursing them, you will have broad chest. You will also remain composed and have unmatched taste buds. By striving in accordance with the Dharma, you will obtain crown, protrusion, and a body with its height and width well proportioned like a banyan tree. By making honest and gentle speeches for a long time and on right occasions, O Lord of humans, you will have a broad tongue and possess the melodious voice of a Brahma. If making truthful speeches constantly and ceaselessly, you will have jaws like a lion and will become gloriously invincible. By showing great respect, serving others, and engaging in whatever inappropriate, you shall have teeth very white, lustrous, and uniformly seized. And so these different marks of enlightened beings are also mentioned in Abhisamaya Alamkara and the Mahayana Uttara Tantra. So even merits collected over a span of 100 billion eons do not suffice to produce a single strand of a Buddha's hair. The light of the sun may at times share similarities of that of fireflies. So might the vital signs of a Buddha at times share similarities to those of a universal monarch. Here ends the second chapter of Precious Garland. And the third chapter is gathering the factors for enlightenment. The first verse says on how the prominent features of the Buddha arise from inconceivable amounts of merits. O great king, listen to the teachings from the great Mahayana sources. So merits derive from solitary realizers and those of learners, non-learners, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, referring to as well as all sentient beings are as infinite as universe, yet from 10 times as much as these, a single hair pore is produced, and all pores of the Buddha arise in a similar manner. From 100 times the merits needed for producing all hair pores, a single exemplary mark is thus said to arise. O king, by accumulating as much merits, one successfully develops a single exemplary mark. This continues on up until 80. So these are going through the 80 different marks, minor marks of the Buddhas. From 100 times the merits needed to develop 80 exemplary marks, a single major sign of Supreme Being is thus held to arise. From 1,000 times the vast merits that produced the 30 major marks on an urna, a mole coiled hair, which is like a full moon, will be is well produced. From 100,000 times the merits that produce the mole of coiled hair, and Ushnishad, the protrusion crown, and an impeccable crown protrusion of the great savior is well produced. From 10 million times 10 millions of merits that produce the crown protrusion, a conch-like throat of Dharma, of the wilder of 10 powers is produced. Even so when you hear about these causes which produce the 32 major marks and 80 minor marks, it would seem very inconceivable, something unimaginable, unbelievable, but you should not feel discouraged. So it says space, earth, water, fire, and wind in all directions are infinite, and so are suffering beings said to be equally infinite. Through Bodhisattva's loving compassion, it is certain for these infinite beings to be released from suffering and led to the state of enlightenment, Buddhahood. Having remained firmly in this, one may be asleep or awake, and from the time one vows this intently, one may become imprudent. So once you have cultivated bodhicitta and then made the pledge to keep the aspiring bodhicitta, and then once you take bodhisattva vows, from time one vows this intently, one may be, having taken the vows, one may become drunk or unconscious. You are not aware of, unconscious of what you are doing. One may become imprudent too. But because beings are infinite, one gathers merits constant in as many as there are sentient beings. And because the merits are infinite, it is said that attaining infinite enlightenment is not as hard. A bodhisattva is dedicated to bring benefit to all sentient beings across the expanse of space. As infinite as the expanse of the space, just as we make the prayer is made, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the misery of the world. So when you are able to make such a firm dedication and pledge, having remained for an infinite time, strive for these infinite beings. Having wished for the infinite Buddhahood, strive to gather infinite merits. Enlightenment may be inconceivable, yet through the four infinitudes, why would one not attain before long Buddhahood, even if infinite? Those termed as... And so, bodhicitta is not for the sake of a limited number of sentient beings, a very few. we are talking about all sentient beings across the expanse of space. And that also the benefit that you are thinking of benefiting, bringing is not just giving enough food and drink and so forth, but we are thinking about leading all these sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood, omniscience state. So we are not thinking about just working for sentient beings for a few years or a few months or 12 years and 3-month retreat and so, one lifetime. Of course, we do talk about becoming enlightened in one lifetime, in one body, and then also becoming enlightened within this during the period of by doing 3 month, 3 weeks or so retreats and so forth. But of course, there may be very exceptional types of sentient beings, disciples, who may have trained themselves in the past so that they have the potential within themselves to become enlightened within one lifetime and so forth. But if you think of becoming enlightened with a selfish motive, of course, it is wrong, and therefore we are thinking about becoming enlightened. As long as space, we make this kind of pledge and prayer, as long as space remains and so forth. And Master Nagarjuna also has made this prayer that may I be sustenance for all the sentient beings until the end of space. And also, Master Nagarjuna has made the prayer that even if one sentient being remains in samsara, may I also remain, even after becoming enlightened, remain in the world to liberate them. And then in Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, also makes a prayer for becoming the sustenance for all sentient beings, like this infinite space, infinity like the space. And then Master Shantideva goes on also to say that which intelligent one would despair to ride the horse of bodhicitta, which leads one from bliss to bliss. Of course, it's very difficult to cultivate, to have, to develop this bodhicitta. Of course, once you develop it, then that is the onset of happiness, lasting happiness for one's self and others, and that also serves the purpose of one's having met with the Dharma. And you are not thinking about selfish motive, but you are thinking about, not thinking about short-term benefit, but you are thinking about benefiting sentient beings until the end of space. So those termed as infinite merits and that termed as infinite wisdom swiftly eliminate all suffering of both body and mind. Negativity causes physical discomfort, such as hunger and thirst in the lower realms. So while wandering in samsara and feeling tired, bodhicitta is like giving shelter to you that soothes you. And so this is what is being referred here, such as hunger and thirst, lower rebirths, while by the merits of abstaining from negativity, one will not experience these in other rebirths. Ignorance causes mental suffering and attachment, aversion, fear. One will not experience these in other rebirths. Ignorance causes mental suffering and attachment, aversion, fear, and desire. Of course, our physical suffering comes from negative actions, and when you actually cultivate and collect lots of huge merit, then you can have a physical body which is without such pain. So even if you may be amidst all kinds of troubles, and you will not be disturbed mentally deep down. So this is what is said. So one will not experience. And yet, by understanding this lack of true basis, one swiftly eliminates them all. And so our attachment and anger come from ignorance, which is a totally distorted perception. So once you actually destroy all objectification of things, thinking and understanding that nothing really exists the way they appear to me, so by understanding this lack of basis means that destroying this objectification of things, and when neither physical nor mental pain cause them discouragement, why would they be disheartened to lead beings from within the realms of this universe? When even brief sufferings are difficult to bear, what need is be said about the prolonged ones? Yet, even if for infinity, what harm could befall on me, the one who is happy and sees no pain? And so, just like we say, just as long as space remains and so forth, such a one has no physical pain, and how could there be any mental pain? Out of compassion for world suffering, they remain behind for a long time. Thinking Buddhahood takes even longer. Wise ones do not feel discouraged. For the sake of virtue and eradication of faults, they always strive towards it. Realizing attachment, aversion, ignorance as non-virtuous thoroughly eliminates them. Seeing non-attachment, non-aversion, non-ignorance as virtuous, respectfully training them. And eliminating the faults of upholding virtues are the Dharma of higher rebirth. Mind's complete eradication of grasping is the Dharma of highest excellence. Out of veneration and making images of Buddhas, stupas, monasteries, provide huge buildings, seats and others in all their splendor from various precious substances, sculpture or draw. Beautifully and finely sacred images of the Buddhas, well seated on lotus, with all resoluteness, help sustain both Dharma and the community of bhikshus, adorn stupas with gold and lattices of precious jewels, as well as embellish the reliquaries with gold and silver flowers, and also with diamond, coral, pearl, sapphire, lapis lazuli, and emerald. Revere them, revere those who teach Dharma by making offerings, they stand in courteous service and doing whatever pleases them differentially. Rely on these 6 noble deeds. Serve your teachers and listen respectfully, assist dutifully and attend upon them. Always honor with reverence the bodhisattvas as well. Do not out of respect honor or prostrate to the fathers, for this may tempt the ignorant ones to be attracted to those written with faults. And then Master Nagarjuna advises on social service, again, community service by building hospitals and places of rest and so forth. And so put in writing the boards of the Muni and the subsequent commentaries. Also donate books and other stationery such as pen and ink. At the center of learning, extend support to teachers and grant them well-defined estates. So these are the ones for social service, all for the sake of knowledge. To alleviate suffering of the sick, elderly and infants, grant lands as rewards to surgeons and physicians in their own town. Out of good thought, build turbans, parks, dikes, ponds, assembly halls and water troughs. Provide beddings, food, grass and wood as well. Construct assembly halls in temples, villages, towns. Build water troughs on roadsides, and wherever water is scarce, out of compassion, always care for those who are ill, without protection, afflicted by pain, and are lowly and impoverished. In a respectful manner, nourish them too, until you have offered to the bhikshus and beggars seasonal food and drinks, prepared meals and cereals and fruits. You shall not partake of them. At the sight of water troughs, place sandals, parasols, water filters, tweezers to remove thorns, the needles and threads and fans, and even give food to ants and insects and water and so forth. So verse number 49 says, employ ripe people to routinely place. So there are certain practices where you put some water in container, food and drink, and then recite a mantra and blow on those foods to help the sentient beings. So employ reliable people to routinely place food and water, molasses, and heaps of grains at the openings of ant hills. Before and after partaking of meals, always arrange food in your own way for hungry ghosts, dogs, ants, and for birds and others as well. And when there are also natural disasters or wars and conflicts where people are afflicted and impoverished, they should also be helped. So wherever there are wars and battles going on, of course, we should help. This is what Master Nagarjuna said. We see aids being given in around the world where there are wars going on, when refugees are fleeing their countries. And also help the farmers by giving seeds, and also reducing the tax on their produce and so forth. So pacify the thieves and bandits in your lands. So protect those about to fail, abolish tolls and reduce toll rates. Do not cause impediments to those waiting at the entrances. Pacify thieves and bandits in your land and in others too. Level the cost of commodities and set their value fairly. And so there are people who try to make lots of profit. And then sometimes what people do is try to gather as much as possible commodities and certain things which they want to sell when they are in abundance as much as possible, and then when they become rare, they wanted to sell them on high price. Just such things should not be done, allowed to be done. And having liberated. So just as you are concerned over what is good for you, so we try to protect ourselves from threat and disasters and so forth. Nurture similar concerns over what is good for others too. Like water, earth, water, fire, wind, medicine, and the trees in the woods, make yourself available to others, be it for even a moment. This is what His Holiness quoted earlier. And so you should not give up on sentient beings, whatever happens. So having nurtured the will to give all possessions from the time one can barely walk 7 steps, bodhisattvas therefore accumulate merits as limitless as space. By giving away girls, well adorned and beautiful, to those desiring them, one will each attain the dharani that well retains the sublime dharma. All victorious ones have in the past given away 80,000 maidens, all bedecked in fine ornaments and complete with enormous riches. Give away with love numerous and bright cloths, ornaments, and so forth. And so whoever lacks resources for Dharma is in fact utterly impoverished. So it is very important for us to give guidance to them. Hence, there is no greater generosity than this to impart it to such a one. Give even a poison to those for whom poison is of benefit. Give not even the best for food to whom it does not benefit, as it helps to cut off one's fingers when bitten by a snake. So the Buddha said, help others, even if it may not be easy. And then next, verse 65 onwards shows the practice of the methods for accumulating wisdom. Extend immense services to the Dharma and to those who teach the Dharma. Listen with reverence to the Dharma and practice generosity by imparting Dharma. Do not revel in talks so mundane. And strive for, rejoice instead in the supramundane. Strive for others in acquiring good qualities, just as you would for your own self. And so you should not say that I have now finished Geshe examination and just forget the text. You should continue to read the text and be more educate yourself more, so that you can be of better benefit to others.
넘버를 이어왔다는 것이. 다 베스트니 그러면 지금 가서 우리
So after having studied the text, I mean, you should not be like someone just reading a scripture. What one should do is actually give thought to what you have studied, and over again. Some people have, of course, said that they have read the Kanjur over 20 times or so, but when it comes to really understanding the meaning, and if they don't really understand it well, then it's not that much benefit. And then there are people who read the 8,000 verses of Prajaparamita. If you could read them by understanding the meaning, it would be very good. I gave the oral transmission of Vajrakata Sutra in Sanskrit. So what it teaches is very profound. So we have to understand the meaning of the Vajrakata Sutra. For that, we need to also understand the fourfold emptiness, which is taught in the Heart Sutra, where it says form is empty, through to emptiness, also not called devoid of, not other than form. And so, if you can understand the meaning of these sutras, it would be really good, because without understanding, you cannot make real transformation within your mind. So you need to have the three types of intelligence: clarity, intelligence which has clarity, and profound clarity, and then swift. And also the intelligence which through which you understand things broadly. And so when you have this kind of intelligence, you will be able to understand some things quite a bit. And then the clear intelligence means you can actually see things very precisely, as we do make distinctions between the relationships between things when we study collected topics. And then the swift intelligence or wisdom helps us to understand things, the teachings very quickly without taking much time. And then the profound wisdom or intelligence means that you will be able to draw conclusions saying, oh, if it's this, if something is this, then it must be that. I mean, and then you will be able to have this kind of called a profound wisdom, which is very kind of inconceivable for others. So Nyengwan Songrapa, who lived one generation before us, was a Geluk master and also studied Nyingma teachings, and then he practiced Dzogchen as well. And so he has said that in order to cultivate wisdom, rather than doing a retreat on Manjushri and reciting his mantra, if you just do 1 month of study of the collected topics, that would be much effective for developing wisdom. You should actually give work to your own mind, your intelligence, and then increase the intelligence and wisdom. Therefore, we consider all over the world education to be very important. So it's not something like following custom, because people see the importance of education and they emphasize it. And similarly, in the case of Buddhism, we need to understand what Buddhism is about and not just follow tradition, saying that this is our custom and tradition. That does not help. And if you do that, then you would have to say that I don't need to really become enlightened. I'm really happy. I have everything, all the necessities in life, and I can live happily. So what we are is we are under the enslaved by our negative emotions. And in the dialogue between true grasping at true existence and selflessness, this grasping at true existence says that I'm really helping you with your livelihood, your fame, and so forth. And so we more or less live our life with the help of these two, the self-grasping attitude and self-cherishing attitude. Of course, if there's no problem, we can live like that. Then we can fight amongst each other, we can steal other people's possessions, and so do all kinds of negative actions. Therefore, it is very important to develop these 4 types of wisdoms. For that, you need to study. You need to have education. And because of that, our masters of the past of Tibet have written so many texts for that reason. And also masters like Dignaka, Dharmakirti, and so forth have used logic and reasoning. And on the basis of that, by studying these, our Tibetan masters like Chapa Choje Sengye also devised the logic, dialectical debate, and then also as Sakya Pandita wrote his text on treasury of logic and epistemology. So these are our pride. If we say we are following the Tibetan followers of Tibetan Buddhism, I mean, it would be really good to understand this. Then you would really be meaning what you claim to be. Otherwise, just doing rituals and we can go about with that, which is at least better than nothing. So Sakya Dungse Rinpoche, who has come here, of course, traditionally, the Dungses, the Sakyas, sons of the Sakya throne holders sit at the beginning of the row in the pujas, and then they actually play the drums and these musical instruments and so forth. But this today, you are not doing that. You have really done good study of the Dharma, and so which is very good. So otherwise, there are many lamas who have no real knowledge of the Dharma, but sit on high thrones, which is not real benefit. So if you have really come as an incarnation, then you must actually leave a legacy by actually having learned the teaching and being able to give teachings to others, so that you are knowledgeable in the scriptures and also experienced. And therefore, it is very important to understand the Dharma through the 3 processes of rejecting others' positions, establishing one's own, and then rebuttal of others' criticisms. And so, beginning with the teachers in your school, then through to the Lama who has given you initiation, then they explain the Tantra, and then given with instructions, quintessential instructions, such a Lama becomes your root guru. So for a teacher of a school, they need to be educated, knowledgeable in what they teach. But it seems that to become a Lama, there is as if this idea that you don't need to be educated. This is wrong, totally wrong. And therefore, if you want to be a Lama, then you will need to be to study the 3 Pitaka and also train yourself in the 3 precepts, 3 practices of morality, concentration, and wisdom. So while we may think that the teachers need to be knowledgeable in schools in order to be able to teach the students, the Lamas don't need such qualifications. Of course, Lama Tsongkhapa has said that the teacher, reliance on teacher is very important in Lamrim teachings. But in order for this to happen properly, the Lama himself must be educated, learned, and knowledgeable in the Dharma. For me also, if I'm not knowledgeable, if I don't have the education and knowledge, still claim to be the Dalai Lama and so forth, it's wrong. And Je Rinpoche has said in Lamrim Chemo, those who wish to tame others, discipline and control others, must first be tamed and controlled or disciplined themselves. So for a teacher, in order to teach their students, the subject must be first called familiar with to him or her. They must know it. Similarly, for a Lama, if you don't have the experience and the knowledge to teach others, how can you actually help others? And then Tsongkhapa goes on to say that with regard to taming oneself, it's not sufficient to have some kind of a partial experience of the Dharma, but one has to actually be trained in the three trainings of morality and so forth. The morality, concentration, wisdom, and so concentration. And so, before quoting these verses from the Mahayana Uttara Tantra, Master Tsongkhapa makes these remarks. Now, even in the Vinaya, one, in order to become the Upadhyaya, the precept master, one should have certain qualifications. And so, beginning with the Vinaya, and then we have also other qualifications in the Sutra and so forth. So Lama, it's not sufficient for Lamas to have a labrang, their own private estate, and to have the name, the title of a Lama, but be knowledgeable in the scriptures and also be experienced with these three, must have these qualifications. And then, with regard to the disciples, the 400 verses says that the disciple must be unbiased, intelligent, and then an aspirant of the path. And so, when you have qualified teacher and a disciple, then, of course, you can go on with how the disciple relies on the correctly on the Lama in terms of relying through called offerings, venerations, honoring the Lama, and then mentally how to rely on the Lama, and then how to avoid the mistakes of relying on avoid the mistakes in terms of relying on Lama, and what is wrong if you don't rely on Lama and so forth, then those will work well. So once I met, about 20 years ago, I met a Chinese from mainland China who said that many Tibetans come to mainland China and China proper, claiming to be Dharma teachers, Dharma Rajas. And then after a while, what they found was that these people who claimed to be Dharma Rajas had actually come to China proper seeking money and women and sex. So if he asked if I could do something about it, and then from here, and I told him there's nothing really I can do from here in India, but what you can do is you should actually learn about the qualifications of a teacher that is given in the Mahayana Sutra, such as being subdued, pacified, and peaceful, or pacified and completely pacified, and more knowledgeable than the disciples, and be compassionate and not feeling tired of giving teachings, and so forth. And so once you know all these qualifications, then you should test these teachers who come to China proper claiming to be teachers. So therefore, by knowing these qualifications, you should examine the teachers and be like a spy on them. And therefore, this is what I told this Chinese devotee. And so when people come to China proper, don't consider them right away as your Dharma gurus, but just consider them, regard them as Dharma friends. And then you can do so that you could have discussions on Dharma with them. And once you find them really qualified, reliable, then you can take them as teachers. Even in the West, in America and so forth, there are people who claim to be teachers without real qualifications of a teacher. And so, out of desperation, I have actually come to say that between Lama and Tulku, a reincarnation, there are four-part relationship. There are those who are Lama but not Tulku, and who are Tulku but not Lama, and then both Lama and a Tulku, and something which is neither. And then today in Mongolia, there are people who claim in Mongolia who are in robes but without monastic vows. They have wives, and therefore we have a new term that has evolved because of this. Monks, a monk with wife. Are you a monk with wife or monk without wife? You have to. We have to ask such things these days. These are signs of decline of the Dharma. So Master Vasubandhu lamented that people with distorted understandings and distorted misunderstandings and so forth are actually disturbing the Dharma. And therefore, he advises us to be careful about how to go when you go about with the practice of the Dharma. And therefore, if you really admire the Buddha and his teaching, we need to be transparent. And we cannot deceive others, and because deceiving others also deceives. By deceiving others, you are also deceiving yourself, claiming to be somebody very special, but without any qualification. So, for Lama, the term in Chinese is Hofu, which translates as living Buddha, but Lama in Sanskrit, in Indian language, is Guru. So, a Lama means somebody who is higher in knowledge than, and who is rich in the experience and knowledge of the scriptures. So, someone who is higher. And so, a living Buddha, there's no meaning of living Buddha in the term Lama or Guru. Because when the living Buddhas misbehave, then things could really become very strange. And so, this is about relying on a Guru who is qualified. When you are confident about such a qualified Lama, then you should have unwavering faith and devotion to such a Lama, and keep your spiritual bond with the Lama. And then you could also make the Guru Yoga as the heart of your practice when it comes to Tantra. This is really significant. And so, for example, Jesu Milarepa, and how he relied on Marpa Lotsawa, the great translator, and Teropa, how he relied on Naropa, how Naropa relied on Telopa. And so, when in order for such a proper reliance on a guru to go well, we need to have qualified Lama and qualified disciple. So, of course, and even if a Lama may be enlightened, but he shows in the form of an ordinary being, and showing up in the form of ordinary being means that the Lama actually assumes to have all the faults that we ordinary beings have. And so, because of this very fact, then we are able to have access to the Lamas. Asanga was said to have meditated on Maitreya for many years. Despite those many years of arduous practice, he was not able to have vision of Master Maitreya. But then, as soon as he developed this intense compassion, he was able to have vision of Maitreya because of having purified negativities. And so, because of the very fact that the Lamas show up in ordinary form, we are able to have access to them, see them, hear their teachings. And if the Lama were to remain in the form of Nirmanakaya, which is a supreme Nirmanakaya form, or Sambhogakaya form of Buddha, of course we ordinary beings will not have access to them, their physical forms even, and therefore we will not be able to listen to their teachings also. And so because we have such a Lama who are showing up in ordinary form, we have the opportunity to listen to their teachings and practice the Dharma, and therefore it makes sense that we should have feel the gratitude to the Lamas and develop respect to them. Verse number 73. So with no expectations for any returns, extend help to others, endure your suffering alone. And verse number 73, should you, like the gods, find all excellences, show no arrogance. Should you, like hungry ghost suffers destitute, show no indolence. So if you are too rich, if you have too much of everything, then of course you will not be able to focus on, take interest in the Dharma. But if you are too destitute, then you will not be able to have the opportunity to listen to the teachings as well. And then even if a truth should lead to loss of one's life or kingship, always for your sake stand for truth and speak nothing differently. As explained, engage in austere practices constantly and appropriately, for only then shall the glorious one become the world's supreme authority. You shall at all times examine everything properly, comprehend things precisely. You shall not become liability to others. Through Dharma, your kingdom will find happiness. Your expensive banner of fame shall reach all directions, and you shall be revered by your ministers. And then next verse shows the impermanence and death. Factors causing death are many, while causes of survival are few, which themselves can lead to death. Thus always engage in Dharma. By constantly practicing Dharma, you and all others in this world shall find a tremendous joy, which is for the moment commendable. Through Dharma, you shall sleep happily and also wake up happily, harboring no vices. Within oneself, you shall see pleasant dreams. And then verse number 84 downwards shows the 8 different qualifications. of love or loving kindness. You shall be loved by gods and humans and be protected by them all as well. You shall find mental happiness and other happiness too, and remain immune to poison and also weapons. You will effortlessly accomplish your goals and will be born in the realm of Brahma. Even if you do not find liberation, you shall still gain these 8 qualities of love. If you inspire beings to develop and enhance the wish for enlightenment, they will always attain the mind of enlightenment that is as firm as the king of mountains. Through faith, you shall not fall into leisureless states. Through discipline, you will migrate to better states. Through familiarization with emptiness, you will develop non-attachment towards everything. Through non-deviation, you shall attain mindfulness. Through contemplation, you will gain wisdom. Through respect, you will comprehend meanings. By protecting Dharma, you will become wise. By eliminating obstructions, while listening to or preaching the Dharma, you will find companions in the Buddhas and swiftly accomplish your goals. Through a non-attachment, your wishes shall be fulfilled. Through non-miserliness, your possessions will increase. Through non-pride, you will rise in prominence. Through forbearance in the Dharma, you will attain the Dharani. By offering the 5 essences and granting protection to the fearful, you shall become immune to evil forces and become supreme among the powerful ones. By offering strings of lamps of stupas, torches to those in darkness, and oil for the lamps, you will attain the divine eye. By presenting symbols and so forth, symbols as offerings and so forth. So His Holiness finished the 3rd chapter as well, and then His Holiness will just read through, read the rest of the text, the 4th chapter onwards. So what is appropriate, inappropriate, appropriate or inappropriate is hard to discern. Thus, even when a king indulges in things that are against Dharma or are improper, those sustaining through him shall still praise him. When it is hard to speak to anyone else of something unpleasant yet helpful, what need to be said of a monk like me to speak to you, O ruler of the great land? But for you to act nobly and to care for all beings, only someone like me can dare speak of things that are unpleasant yet beneficial. Whatever is true, pleasant, meaningful, and suitable, one must to the disciples lovingly tell. This the Blessed One said, and I too shall speak to you of these. If one remains steadfast, even when words non-spiteful, truthful or flattering are uttered, consider such a one as worthy of listening, like clean water for ablution. Whatever helpful words I have said to you in this life and the others, know them well to do whatever benefits oneself and others. If you do not give away the things well acquired through your generosity to beggars in the past, then due to ingratitude and attachment, you shall not attain wealth even ever again. A potter in this world, when not paid, can't be made to carry goods, but the beggars and the poor, even when not paid, carry into our next lives 100-fold more. Always take delight in noble thoughts and in noble deeds as well, for it is from actions that is noble that noble effects of all kinds ensue. O King, establish centers of Dharma and install images of 3 jewels. The 3 jewels that draw fame and glory, which lesser kings cannot even fathom. O King, it is wiser not to establish the centers of Dharma that do not horripilate the wealthy kings, for it brings no fame, even after death. On finding things magnanimous, avoid arrogance and instead develop joy over your magnanimity. For the inferiors whose joy have diminished, use all your resources for their sake. As you give away all possessions and wander helplessly elsewhere, all that you do for Dharma shall come to you as you may. And so these verses now show the qualifications of ministers and people who work under the king. Such as for generals, verse number 24 says, for generals, appoint those who are generous, free of attachment, courageous and gentle, moderate in utilization of resources, steadfast and forever conscientious and virtuous. For chieftains, appoint elders who are inclined to Dharma and sincere, skillful and understand all tasks, are erudite in the fields of sciences and are well organized, impartial and affectionate. Every month give ears to their reports of the incomes and their sources too. Having listened to them, instruct well on what to do for centers of Dharma. If you rule for the sake of Dharma and not for fame and or pleasure, it will yield immense fruit, or else it shall be pointless. O king, when in this world beings often harm one another, so listen to how you can rule and follow the Dharma too. So, with regard to happiness, if we only think about physical bliss or pleasure, there's not much meaning to it. What we think about is the bliss or happiness within the mind. So the impure or contaminated pleasure are something which gives some pleasure, but if you rely on them too much, then you get problems. For example, if you are cold and you sit in the sun, you'll feel some relief. But then if you sit in the sun too long, you'll feel hot and burnt. And similarly, it is the case when you are feeling hot, you go into shade, to shade, and then you will feel some coolness. And then if you sit in the cold too long, that also gives problems. And so this kind of worldly, mundane pleasures, if you rely on them too much, then they also become cause of suffering.
일 습을 좀 거둘라 나야 뒤집으로 때베이나 야 나시
딱
용돼야지
직진 얘기도 되나
차도야 그 용돼 그거 어디서도
시바르시
온부이는 미교가 나버셔 정신 대베 유예 나발라 이지 민의 도바나 대원형 로버치 되는 온부지게 전시셔가 가인가 대야 되면 빠르면 대야 되면 빠르면 시도 받아라 전에 부모님을 좀 얻어라 되면서 오면은 나버셔 좀 유니 대다 마온데 뒤에 나버셔 메라 강 대대 양내 되면도 지들 민의 좀 이면 개명으로 이제 뭐 좀 남긴 남기니 다대 유도 와서 뭐 소소로 다대나 귀신 매배 매대교로 되나 제예매 요도 뭐 한번 해야 되는 게 메터도 주는 만남니 소 매배는 되버 되면 이제 수장도 되면도 남제소도 제도 뭐 남장 남제도 소소도 되면
chapter 4 verse number 61 62, which says pain is externally altered, it is misconstrued as pleasure. Likewise, when pleasure is destroyed, it is misconstrued as pain. And then 63 down shows the selflessness and emptiness. Since they are essentially unreal, avoid cravings for want of pleasure and rid your cravings to end all pain. One who sees this finds liberation. If asked, who sees them? It is the mind that sees. Though conventionally, without mental factors, mind does not arise, not ultimately existent. And verse number 65 says, realizing how beings are actually unreal, one will, like a fire denied of fuel, read the basis of and grasping of existence, and will then attain nirvana. And next verse is that even bodhisattvas, having retained this, resolved to seek enlightenment. Just as the Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas attained their nirvana through the practice, cultivation of wisdom, realizing selflessness and emptiness, and yet compassion alone binds them to samsara until they are enlightened, the bodhisattvas. And then to those who criticize, who say that the Mahayana is not a teaching of the Buddha, here is the answer, response. In the Mahayana, the Tathagatas have well explained the factors for becoming a bodhisattva, yet those with utter ignorance deride them through intense spite. By not knowing the qualities of faults, misconceiving qualities as faults, or detesting these qualities, one derides the Mahayana. To harm others is faulty, to help others is righteous. So, who knowingly deride Mahayana are known to hate righteousness. Verse number 70, remaining unconcerned with one's goals and rejoicing one's goal and rejoicing in the act of helping others is Mahayana precept, the source of all goodness. By deriding this, you shall be ruined. The faithful might fail in their understanding, yet others may be overcome by hatred. When even the faithful are incinerated, what needs be said about those with hatred? When poison can counter poison, according to some medical treatises, why would pain not rid themselves pain, as there seems no difference? As mind precedes all dharmas, it is held to be primary. When mere pain can turn beneficial, then why would mind dispose to helping not benefit? And then comes the practice of the six perfections of the perfection vehicle. From verse number 80 down, which says, since the nature of generosity, discipline, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom, and compassion are associated with Mahayana, what fault can be spoken of these? Discipline and generosity benefit others. Effort and patience benefit others. The concentration and wisdom lead to liberation, benefit oneself. Concentration and wisdom lead to liberation. This, in brief, summarizes the teaching of the Mahayana. In brief, whatever the Buddha taught about ways to benefit oneself and others and attain liberation. And so the teachings on emptiness that are taught in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras should not make you unhappy. Are all contained in these 6 perfections. So these, in fact, the Buddha's teaching. So the nature of merit and wisdom of the great path to enlightenment are well expounded in the Mahayana, yet fools lack tolerance to this. So within the teaching of the Buddha himself, the followers of the Buddha himself, there are those who say the ultimate vehicle is only one, or there are 3 ultimate vehicles. And so according to Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, the ultimate 3 vehicles are told. It is taught that there are 3 ultimate vehicles, whereas Mahayana Uttara Tantra says there's only 1 ultimate vehicle. And so His Holiness was commenting on verse number 87, which says, if you consider emptiness as Buddha's greatness and see it as irrationally valid, and why do you learned ones not consider Mahayana to be just similar? And then verse number 90 says, since the vehicles of the hearers contains no bodhisattva prayers, no deeds or dedications, how can they become a bodhisattva? Intended primarily for the bodhisattva's enlightenment, the Buddha did not explain these elsewhere. Who, aside from the Buddha, can be a better testimony to this? So when the Buddha taught that there is the 5 aggregates are the burdens or loads, and that the carrier of the load is the person, he was kind of indicating that there is a person who is autonomous, independent, existing. Whereas in other teachings he has said that there's no person but aggregates, and at other times he also has said that both the person and the aggregates are devoid of any autonomous independent existence and so forth. So according to the disciples' dispositions, he taught gave these different teachings. So blessed with the concept of noble truths and the conducive factors for enlightenment, the fruits of the Buddha are by far superior to those of the hearers. And the ways engaging in the bodhisattva deeds are taught in the collections of the sutras and so forth. And His Holiness finished the 4th chapter. And then next comes the deeds of the bodhisattvas, the 5th chapter, which is the teaching on how to attain the goal of bodhisattvas quickly. And then, as an ardent member, firstly develops respect for the trainings, exerted rigorously in individual liberation vows, read extensively and comprehend their meanings well. Verse number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8. So here the 7 types of pride or arrogance are given, which are to falsely presume to be inferior to the inferiors, equal to the equals, and superior to the superior. Superior or equal to the inferiors is called egotistic pride. And the others are, which it says pride is of 7 types, which I shall explain them here. So these are given. misconstruing oneself as superior or equal for any qualities is pride of superiority. Thus, one assumes oneself to be superior to even those exceedingly superb. And then verse number 13 says, 13 down shows the wrong livelihood. Pretension is to restrain from senses that crave for offerings and respect. Flattery, as mentioned, is to speak pleasantly for the sake of offerings and respect. Implicit begging is to praise others' possessions in order to obtain them. Coercive misappropriation is to deride others brazenly in order to obtain their wealth. Seeking things by citing earlier acquisitions is to praise what has not been formerly received. Criticism is to reiterate each and every mistake of others. Timidity is induced by frailty due to lack of self-evaluation. Obsession for undesirable things is for the indolent ones. Discrimination is a mental attitude shrouded by the darkness of desire and hatred. Not subjecting anything to mental consideration is explained as indifference of attitude. Laziness over agreeable activities results in loss of respect. Inappropriate consideration to the superior and the blessed ones make one an immoral person. Clinging is a minor, ever-abiding fetter arising from desire and attachment in the realm of desire, while intense clinging is a major, ever-binding fetter that is caused by desire. Desire is a mind infused with desire and attachment that is attached to one's own possessions. Inappropriate covetousness is to yearn for others' possessions. Unchaste desire for inappropriate person is to lewdly praise women one must avoid. Hypocrisy is to feign good qualities, though one craves for evil and lacks such qualities. Insatiable desire is extreme craving that lacks the joy of contentment. Ambition for power tempts one to brag over one's qualities in all ways possible. Intolerance is an inability to forbear when harmed or overcome by suffering. Irreverence is an act of disrespect towards the deeds, preceptors, and teachers. So with regard to Bodhisattva precept, one has to abstain from any selfish motive and think of helping others. Verse number 35 is what His Holiness was commenting on. The qualities that Bodhisattvas develop, if briefly explained, are generosity, discipline, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom, compassion, and so on. Verse number 34 says, these, the Bodhisattvas, must fully abandon, while those ordained must abandon even more. And so Madhyamaka Avatara by Master Chandrakirti goes through the 10 Bodhisattva grounds, on the basis of which he wrote the 10 chapters of the Madhyamaka Avatara. Those are based on the teachings in this text, on which are given here in the 5th chapter. So from generosity comes prosperity, discipline brings happiness, patience results in good complexion, effort brings splendor, concentration secures peace, wisdom provides freedom. Through compassion, all your wishes shall be accomplished. By simultaneously perfecting in all these 7 practices, one attains lordship over the universe, the source of the inconceivable wisdom. Just as in the hearer's vehicle, 8 grounds of the hearers are explained, so too in the Mahayana vehicle, 10 grounds of Bodhisattvas are explained. First of these is extremely joyous, as it brings joy to the Bodhisattvas. Having abandoned 3 ever-abiding factors, one is born in the lineage of the Tathagata. Through the process of its maturation, one excels in perfection of generosity, causing 100 worlds to shudder, one becomes a great ruler of the world. The second is called immaculate, as all 10 actions of body, speech, and mind become wholly immaculate, wherein one spontaneously abides. Through the process of its maturation, one excels in perfection of discipline, gaining possession of the 7 precious objects. One becomes a kind, universal monarch. One will also become skillful in abandoning corrupt morality of sentient beings. The third is called luminous, as peaceful rays of wisdom emit forth. Developing concentration and cleverness, attachment and anger will completely cease. Through the process of its maturation, one primarily engages in patience and effort. Having become the king of gods, one eradicates essential cravings of the desire realm. The fourth is called the radiant. The fifth is called indomitable. The sixth is called great advancement, and the seventh is called gone afar. The eighth is called ground of youthfulness, and the ninth is called excellent wisdom, and the 10th one is called cloud of Dharma. And so these are the Bodhisattva 10 Bodhisattva grounds. Verse number 61 down. The grounds of the Buddhas are different, as they are incomparable in everywhere. The Buddha's greatness can be merely explained through the possession of the 10 powers, where each power is as infinite as the countless sentient beings. So, from verse number 65 down, shows the 7-limb practice, which we, if we could recite it as part of the 7-limb practice, it would be good. So it says, hence, in front of an image, a stupa or the likes, recite these 20 stanzas 3 times each. With deep veneration, I always seek refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and the Bodhisattvas as well. To these objects of worship, I humbly prostrate. Refraining from non-virtuous actions, I shall thoroughly uphold all virtues. I shall deeply rejoice for all the merits the embodied beings may well possess. With head bowed and palms put together, I pray to the fully accomplished Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma and live for as long as sentient beings. With merits accumulated through such acts, or any actions I may or may not have done, may all sentient beings fully attain the unsurpassed mind of enlightenment. And then in certain teachings, like in the Sutrayana, it is said that in order for one to become a Buddha for the first called fresh, one must be a male. Whereas in the highest yoga tantra, to attain the physical form of a Buddha, it shows the substantial, the primary cause for that. Whereas in the perfection vehicle, the Sutrayana, there is mention of a mental body that the bodhisattvas can attain, which comes from a ground of the ignorance. The imprint of ignorance. Of course, such a course cannot go together with a fully enlightened one's body and mind. In Kalachakra, the form body of a Buddha is attained on the basis of attaining the empty form. And then in the Nyingma teaching also, there's a very similar teaching of attaining the form body. Whereas in the Samaja Tantra, there is mention of the illusory body, and in the Mother Tantras, there is mention of attaining a rainbow body. in any case, with regard to attaining Buddhahood in one lifetime, when you become a Buddha for the first time, it is said that even a female practitioner can become a Buddha. So having acquired immaculate senses and overcome the sense states without leisure, may all beings enjoy freedom of actions and take delight in excellent livelihood. May all embodied beings possess precious jewels and have innumerable resources that do not exhaust in the world. May all women at all times become men per excellence. May all embodied beings possess. So His Holiness was commenting on this verse, these two lines in verse number 72. May all embodied beings possess intelligence and divine legs. May all beings possess good complexion, excellent physique, and notable charisma, beautiful to behold and free of sickness. May they enjoy great strength of long life. So after verse number 83, like water, fire, like earth, water, fire, wind, medicine, and wood of the wild, may all beings always find joy freely and without obstructions. May, this verse I always recite in order to cultivate bodhicitta within myself. May I be precious like life to all beings, and they be more precious to me. May their negativity ripen upon me, and may all their merits, may all my merits ripen upon them. As long as even a few beings remain in bondage here or elsewhere, until then may I too remain, even if I have attained enlightenment. If merits attained from such expressions were to assume form, it would be as much as the sands in the Ganges, as many sand grains in the Ganges that even the world could not contain. This is what the Blessed One taught, and this is where rationality is sought. Just as world of sentient beings are limitless, so too are the wishes of the to benefit others. Whatever Dharma in all its brevity I may have imparted unto you, may you always cherish them as much as you cherish your body. To whoever Dharma is dear, to them their body is truly dear. Nourishing whatever is dear, it is done through Dharma alone. Rely upon Dharma as you would to yourself. Rely upon practice as you would to Dharma. Rely upon wisdom as you would to practice. Rely upon the learned one as you would to wisdom. By harboring undue doubts, even to the chaste, loving, and wise, who expresses encouraging words, your goals are remain unaccomplished. Whoever is chaste, loving, wise, and confident and speaks whatever is beneficial, may such a one be one's own master to tame one's in both words and actions. Know briefly. So these instructions are, of course, given personally to the king. Satakarni or Gautami Putra, but indirectly Master Nagarjuna was actually advising us as well. Thoroughly freed from all defects and adorned with all good qualities, strive for the welfare of all beings, become an enlightened master yourself. And I impart this Dharma not for the king alone, but for the beings of all kinds, with my sole intention to help that I and all sentient beings attain the state of complete enlightenment. O King, whatever I have said here and as advice is worth contemplating at every sitting. Observe discipline. So this was translated into Tibetan by the Tibetan King translator Louis Gelsen. Later, in Indian Master Kanaka Varma and Tibetan translator Pasab Nyema Tak amended the text in comparison with 3 extant Indian editions. May these teachings also dry up the oceans of sufferings altogether. And then the next text is Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. the organizers have distributed the verses along with a commentary by Jitsun Rendawa. Of course, I had no time to read, and so please, I will read through the verses, and you may continue. You may read the commentary together with the verses. So, with regard to the view of the Madhyamaka view and the practice of avoiding the 10 non-virtuous actions, these are very extensively taught in Master Nagarjuna's Ratnavali, this precious Garland. So Master Nagarjuna's texts like Dharma Dhatu Stova, in praise of the Dharma Dhatu, are the teachings called explanation of the teachings like which pertain to the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. Now we'll go through this letter to Nagarjuna's letter to a friend in Indian language, Surleka, in Tibetan, Shebetingik, in English, letter to a friend, homage to gentle, glorious youth, Manjushri. Listen now to these few lines of noble rhymes that I have composed for those with many virtues, fit for good, to help them yearn for merit, springing from the sacred words, or he who was gone to bliss. The wise will always honor this one verse number 2 says that you should not just focus on the words, but focus on the meaning of the text. So the third verse, while you have surely learned and understood the mighty Buddha's many lovely words, is it not so that something made of chalk by moonlight lit shines gleaming whiter still? And then the next verse shows the 6 remembrances of the 3 jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and bounteous acts, and moral laws, and gods. In other words, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are, as we already dealt with, we should recollect the 3 objects of refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, taking them as our causal objects of refuge. The purpose of going for refuge in these causal refuges is in order for ourselves to attain those qualities of the Buddha, and also the Dharma that is within the Buddha that you become, and also the Sangha that you would become in the end. So you aspire to attain the Dharma, Sangha, and Buddha in the future. So with this kind of aspiration to attain the Dharma, the true Sangha, and the Buddha, you take refuge in the causal refuges, the Buddha, Dharma, Buddha as the teacher, Dharma as the actual refuge, and the Sangha, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as the causal refuges. So in order for us to attain Buddhahood, we have the Buddha nature within ourselves. So why do we aspire to become a Buddha? Attain enlightenment is in order to help others. And therefore, where the Mahayana Uttara Tantra goes through the 7 Vajra points of attaining, called the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Buddha nature, and then the qualities of the Buddha, and then also the enlightened activities of the Buddha. Therefore, we usually say this verse of taking refuge and cultivating bodhicitta. May to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, I take refuge. May the practices of generosity and so forth that I have done make me to attain a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. As I have said earlier, in order to attain higher rebirth from life after life, we need to practice the 10 virtuous actions, abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. And so it says, with body, speech, and mind, always rely on the wholesome deeds, the tenfold virtuous paths. And then also, on top of that, avoid liquor at all costs, thus find true joy to lead a life of virtuous deeds. Possessions are ephemeral, essenceless. Know this and give them generously to monks, to Brahmins, to the poor, to your friends. Beyond, there is no greater friend than giving gifts. Keep your vows unbroken, undegraded, uncorrupted, and quite free from stains. So you can keep vows or pledges by avoiding harming others, and also keeping the bodhisattva vows as well. Just as the earth, the base for all that still or moves, or on discipline, it is said, is founded all that's good. Generosity and discipline, patience, diligence, concentration, wisdom that knows thusness, those measureless perfections make them grow and be a mighty conqueror who has crossed samsaras and sea. Verse number 9. Those who show their parents great respect with Brahma or master will be linked. By venerating them, they'll win repute. In future, they'll attain the higher realms. Eschew all harms. Don't steal, make love, or lie. Abstain from drink, ultimate untimely greed for food, indulging in high bets and singing too. Refrain from dancing or adornments. Shun. And then he's almost commenting on this verse number 11, which deals with the 8 branch vows of a layperson with vows. So if you do not respect others, of course you will cause harm to them. As it is said, hold yourself the lowest amongst all when you are amongst others, and then you will be able to respect others. So if you have arrogance, you will not be if you have arrogance, you'll be reckless. And so it says arrogance, attachment, hate, and pride. Such traits are seen as enemies of good. Carefulness is the way to deathlessness, while carelessness is death, the Buddha taught. And thus, so that your virtuous deeds may grow, be careful constantly and with respect. So verse number 16, he has abused me, struck. So abused here refers to call others actually belittling you, disregarding you. And all my money too he has purloined. To harbor such resentment leads to strife. Give up your grudge and sleep where sleep will easily come. So understand your thoughts to be like figures drawn on water, sandy soil, and carved in stone. So with regard to non-virtuous actions or karmas that you create, they should be like patterns drawn on water. They just disappear quickly. And so if you look at when you are angry, for example, and if you watch your mind at that point, as it is taught in the Dzogchen teachings, it is said that in the Dzogchen teachings, you should not be carried away by the anger itself, but just focus your mind on the luminous nature of the mind, the basic luminous nature it has. If you do that, then there won't be so much grasping at the anger itself. Of these, for tainted thoughts, the first is the best, while when you long for Dharma, it's the last. So if you acquaint your mind with renunciation, bodhicitta, compassion, and view of emptiness, I mean, you should do them, familiarize them within your mind. Three kinds of speech are used by humankind, and these are Victor variously described, like honey, sweet, like flour, true, like filth, improper speech. The last of these eschew. Some there are who go from light to light, and some who end from darkness to darkness still, while some from light to darkness or darkness to light end up. Thus 4 of these be as the first. Men, like mangoes, can be sour and yet look ripe. Some, though ripe, look green, and others green are sour indeed, while others still look ripe and ripe they are. From these, know how to act. Do not gaze on others' wives, but if you do, regard them as your mother, child, or sib, depending on their age. Should lust arise, think well, they are by nature unclean filth. Guard this fickle mind as you would do your learning, children, treasure, or your life. Renounce all sensual pleasure as if it were viper, poison, weapon, foe, or fire. The pleasures we desire will bring us ruin. They are like the kimber fruit, the Buddha said. Eschew them. It's their chains that tightly bind the worldly in samsara's prison house. In order to see the ultimate reality, one needs to engage in listening to the teachings, reflecting on the teachings with strenuous effort, and then meditate on it. So verse number 27 says, in order that you see the absolute, get used to truly understanding things. No other practice is there such as this, possessed of special virtues such as these. To those possessed of reading, learning, handsome looks, who have wisdom, neither discipline nor need to know, and so forth. And then the 8 worldly concerns are shown in verse number 29. So these doesn't help you, but actually cause more problems and difficulties to you. If you are able to actually do the practice rightly, then you should not be able to make yourself be swayed by these 8 worldly concerns. It says, you who know the world, take gain and loss, or bliss or pain, or kind words and abuse, or praise and blame. These 8 mundane concerns, make them the same, and don't disturb your mind. Perform no evil, even for the sake of Brahmins, bhikshus, gods, or honored guests, your father, mother, queen, or for your court. The ripened fruit in hell is for you alone. In the Kadamba teachings, even a king may be the ruler of the kingdom, will live in hunger, and even a beggar can live with contentment. With contentment, a beggar can live very happily. Of all great wealth, contentment is supreme, said he who taught and guided gods and men. So always be content. Be content. If you know this, you have no wealth. True riches you'll have found. Kind sir, to own a lot brings so much misery. There's no such grief for those with few desires. The more the Naga lords possess of heads, the more their headache, the more they have of cares. And then a wife who, like a sister, follows you, affectionate like a true and loving friend, supportive like a mother, obedient like a maid, she must be honored like a family god. So this shows how one's spouse should be. Take food as medicine in the right amount, without attachment, without hatefulness. Don't eat for vanity, for pride or ego's sake. Eat only for your body's sustenance. And then verse number 40, constantly and perfectly reflect on love, compassion, joy, impartiality, and should you not obtain the higher state, at least you will find bliss in Brahma world. The four samadhis, which in turn discard pursuits of pleasure, joy, bliss, and pain, will lead to fortune equal to gods in Brahma, light, great virtue, and great fruit, great good. And so by doing virtuous practices, helping others, there's great benefit of happiness and so forth for yourself. So great good and evil deeds are five kinds, determined by their constancy, their zeal, their lack of counteragent, their perfect fills. Strive in this respect to practice good. A pinch of salt can give its salty taste to a little water, but not to the great Ganges stream. So know that likewise minor evil deeds can never change a mighty source of good. And so it is important, the text also shows the qualities of concentration. It says in verse 45, with faith and diligence and mindfulness and concentration, wisdom, five in all, you must strive hard to reach the highest state. As powers, these forces take you to the peak. So these are dealing with the four stages of the path of preparation. I'm not beyond my karma and the deeds I've done. So if you wish to attain highest the definite goodness, then you should actually acquaint yourself with the understanding of the paths leading to that goal. If higher birth and freedom is your quest, you must become accustomed to right views. Those who practice good with inverse views will yet experience terrible results. Know this truth, that men are ever sad, impermanent, devoid of self, impure. Those who do not have close mindfulness, their view 4 times inverted, head for ruin. A form is not the self, the Buddha taught, and self does not have form, nor dwell in form, while form dwells not in self. Thus you must see the 4 remaining aggregates are empty too. And then verse number 50 also. And then pain does not come from self nor others, and so forth. The verse number 50 says the aggregates are not a simple whim, for neither time nor nature do they come. From neither nor time do they come, nor by themselves, from God, or without cause. Their source, you ought to know, is ignorance. From karmic deeds and craving have they come. Of course, you can admire the Sangha, the Buddha, and so forth, but they don't bring your the liberation to you by themselves. What you should do is practice the Dharma. The qualities that you develop within yourself can actually lead you to liberation. To feel that one is ethically superior, to view one's body wrongly, and to doubt, with these three factors, you should understand the way through the freedom city gates is blocked. Freedom will depend on you alone. So this is where His Holiness was commenting, and there is no one else. You have no friend can help. So bring endeavor to the Four Noble Truths with study, discipline, and concentration. Train yourself always in superior discipline, or superior wisdom and superior mind. Monks' vows exceed 105 tenths, yet they are all included in these three. So at this time we have attained the superior form, and then to create the internal causes. O born among the long-lived gods, of these 8 defective states they give to no opportunity, you must be free, and finding opportunity be diligent to put a stop to birth. O gentle sir, to make your disenchantment grow with this samsara, source of many pains, desires frustrated, death, ill health, old age, please heed its defects. And then think about the fault of samsara. Men who have fathers, sons, in turn are sons, and mothers, likewise daughters. Bitter foes turn into friends. The converse too is true. Because of this, samsara is never sure. Know that every being has drunk more milk than all the 4 great oceans could contain, and still, by emulating common folk, they'll circle, drinking ever more and more. So this shows that these pleasures of samsara is something which is endless. You can never be contented with. And a heap of all bones, each being has left, would reach to Meru's top or even higher. That to count one's mother's lineage with pills the size of berries, the earth would not suffice. Indra, universally revered, will fall again to the earth through action's force, and he who ruled the universe as king will be a slave within samsara's wheel. For ages it was rapture to caress the lovely breasts and waists of heaven's mates. Now one will bear the terrible caress, the crush, the slash, and tear of hell's machine. For years you might have stayed on Meru's crest, delighting as it yielded underfoot. But think now of the torment that will strike, to wade through glowing coals and rotten flesh. Those who in the joyous garden played, and in beauty's grove were served by heaven's mates, will come to woods of trees with sword-like leaves, and cut their heads and feet, their ears and nose. So these show the different states of hell realms. Among the golden lotuses and lovely mates, they bathed in heavenly gently flowing pools, but into hell's own water will they plunge, the scalding, caustic river none can ford.
미세 덴베 카남 톡 크지 심부 불원 나서다 정부 시장 정부 출인 지자다人미세 마수 칠친베 사월티지 저도 명한데 크신 다음에 말을 초선니
So verse number 80 down. Some there are who roll about and wail, devoured by worms and multicolored grubs, 10,000 buzzing flies and bees that leave great stings and bites unbearable to touch. Some in heaps of blazing red-hot coals are burned without a break, their mouths agape, and some are boiled in cauldrons made of iron, cooked like dumplings, heads turned upside down. The very instant that they cease to breathe, the wicked taste the boundless pains of hell. And he who hearing this is not afraid, and thousandfold is truly diamond hard. And then comes the suffering in the animal realm. Verse number 89. And then the hungry goats ram. Verse number 91. So it says, for animals there's multifold distress. They are slaughtered, tied up, beaten, and the rest. For those denied the virtue that brings peace, there's agony as one devours another. Some of them are killed just for their pearls, their wool or bones, their meat or skin and fur, and other helpless beasts are forced to work. They are kicked or struck with hands, with whips and goads. For predators too, there is not the slightest break in suffering from their unfulfilled desires. What dire misery they must endure from hunger, thirst, cold, heat, fatigue, and fear. Some, their mouths like needles' eyes. Their bellies, huge as mountains, ache from want of food. They do not even have the strength to eat discarded scraps, the smallest bits of filth. And so all the realms of existence, such as the four formless realms, the 16 different states, realms are within the concentration realm, and then also the desire realm. I mean, because of our grasping at self, we are not free from suffering. So verse number 101, those gods who transmigrate from heavenly worlds and do not have some little virtue left will tumble helpless to their just abodes as beasts or hungry spirits or in hell. And so samsara is like this, and thus we are born as gods, as humans, denizens in hell, as gods, animals, but you should know that birth is not good, a pot of many ills. So this is the nature of samsara. We have the suffering, the painful experiences that are obvious to us as being undesirable, and then the changeable suffering. And mainly, we should think about this suffering in terms of how we are brought about in this samsara through our delusions and karma, which is to say, this existential pervasive suffering. The root of all these kind of birth, the moment we are born in samsara, we are bound by suffering. So we need to think about how to think about freeing ourselves from it. So we should know how we are bound, what has actually bound us, what binds us in this samsara, in this within this bondage of our psychophysical aggregates which have come from karma and delusions. So, as long as you wish to reach enlightenment, or there's no way other than meditating on selflessness. The view of selflessness must be generated within yourself. In the Prajnaparamita Sutras, it is said that this was the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and those also wishing to cultivate the path of Bodhisattvas must cultivate within themselves this view of selflessness or emptiness. So in order to do that, of course, without making some move, nothing can happen. So you need to and therefore, Master Nagarjuna says, give up your efforts trying to stop all this as if your hair or clothes has just caught fire. Just do your best to not be born again. No greater goal or need is there than this. With discipline and concentration, wisdom too, attain nirvana, peaceful, disciplined, immaculate, unaging, deathless, inexhaustible, and quite distinct from earth, water, fire, wind, sun, and moon. Mindfulness, mind discernment, diligence, a joyful mind, and flexibility, concentration, evenness. These 7 limbs are elements that lead to Buddhahood. Lacking wisdom, concentration fails, and without concentration, wisdom too. And then verse number 109 says, goes through the 9 down, goes through the 12 links of dependent origination. So through ignorance comes our actions. Once certain action is committed or created, the next moment the action itself goes away, but it still continues its impetus, which is called shikpa, like the factor of its disintegration still goes on. And then from that comes consciousness. So that is the shikpa is left on the consciousness, and then name and form appears. And from that arises the 6 sense faculties, and whence contact comes. So contact is the coming together of the object, the faculty, sense faculty, and the consciousness. And thus did the Buddha teach. And then from contact, feeling comes to be. And based on feeling, craving will appear. And so because of our sensation, what happens is when they are pleasant, we crave for that. And so craving will appear. And again, from craving, grasping will be born. And then becoming. And so the karmic imprint, or the shikpa, the disintegration of the karmic action that is left on the consciousness earlier, is now intensified or revitalized by craving and grasping, and therefore the becoming happens. And then from there is birth. And then once there is birth, comes misery untold, and sickness, aging, wants, frustrated, death, decay. In short, the whole great mass of pain. If birth is stopped, all this will be no more. So if you want suffering to stop, you need to stop birth. And so, in order to stop this whole chain of pain and samsara, you need to stop this chain of called birth, age, and aging, and so forth. Within the treasury of Buddha's words, there's none so precious, so profound as this. And those who see that things dependently arise do see the Buddha, perfect knower of the truth. And then the Eightfold Noble Path is shown. Perfect view and livelihood with effort, mindfulness, concentration, perfect speech and conduct, perfect thought. The path's eight limbs. To find true peace, please meditate on them. So you should generate or cultivate a path or the view of selflessness which is not tainted by distorted views. So for that to happen, then you should have mindfulness. And in order for the mindfulness and concentration and so forth to happen, to go correctly, one should have effort and a good livelihood and so forth, good conduct. To take birth is to suffer, and to crave is its immense and universal source. Making craving cease, and freedom will be yours. To achieve that, take the Eightfold Noble Path. For you to see that these same Four Noble Truths, you must strive hard to practice constantly. Even worldly men with fortune in their laps, through knowledge crossed that river, troubled states. And even those who realized the truth did not fall from the heavens, nor emerge like crops of corns from earth's dark depths, but once were ruled by its pleasures and were ordinary men. So the main advice the Master Nagarjuna is giving to the king is to have a peaceful and controlled, disciplined mind and careful, heedful state of mind. O fearless one, what need to tell you more? For here's the counsel that will truly help. The vital point is to tame your mind, for mind is the root of Dharma, so the Buddha said. It's hard enough for monks to follow perfectly all these instructions that I have given you, yet practice excellence, the very pith of one of these, and give your life its sense. Rejoicing in the virtuous deeds of all, now dedicate your three good kinds of acts to all that they may come to Buddhahood. Then, by this mass of virtuous deeds, may you, in boundless lives in worlds of gods and men, be master of the yoga of all excellences. And like sublime Chandrasik, may you work to guide the many feeble, stricken souls, and thus may you take many births and dispel all ills, old age, desire and hatred in perfect Buddha field. In a perfect Buddha field, may you have infinite life and protector of the world, like Buddha, Amitabha, sublime Lord of the boundless light. And so this completes there's 123 verses, and this completes the letter to a friend written by the Sublime Master Nagarjuna to a friend, King Surabhibhadra, or Satakarani, or whatever the name is. So, having given teaching on these two texts by Master Nagarjuna as preliminary teaching to the Kalachakra initiation, because of lack of time, we didn't have much explanation and also translation into Ladakhi. In any way, you have received the transmission of the explanation and explanatory transmission of the teaching, the two texts. Even if you cannot read them on a daily basis, please think about the meaning. Reflect on the meaning of these two texts. And you also, in Ladakh, you also do discussions on the Dharma. You should do this, your discussions are based on these texts. And then the teaching itself is recorded, and you can use the recording, and then maybe the translators, the Ladakhi interpreters can interpret it to the people gathered for discussion. So you have received a transmission And there is the oral transmission lineage of this text. The purpose of distributing the book that you have is in order for you to read and study them. And so read them sometimes, and make yourself familiar with these books. So for these 3 days, we had the Dharma Discourse, and based on the teaching, based on these 2 texts, as it is said by Master Nagarjuna, make this your intention. So what you should do is be humble and respectful to others, and don't think about yourself alone. So having received the teaching, you should at least have something that you can show to others as an imprint of receiving the teachings. So if there's no change in your behavior, your thinking, your thought, and your speech, then receiving teachings doesn't make any sense. So you should make transformation within yourself. And tomorrow there's no teaching, and day after tomorrow, and the day and the next day after that, and then the next day we will do the Kalachakra initiation, in entering into the mandala, and then receiving the initiation of Kalachakra, having entered the mandala. So the rituals for the preparation of the Kalachakra initiation would be done in the mornings, and then the preliminary initiation of Kalachakra, and so entrance into the mandala and so forth will be done in the afternoon. So since we are doing the Kalachakra initiation and the preliminary initiation in the afternoon, and it will be hot, if it's hot in the afternoon, so what I do is, when it's hot, I use a towel, a wet towel, to wipe my face of the sweat and so forth. But instead of that, last time when I was in Mumbai, it was very hot, and so I asked the people to bring a towel which is soaked in water, and I put it on my head to cool myself down. And so you could do that also. So the lay people should bring your umbrellas, and then the monks and nuns should use their upper robe, fold them and put them on your head. And you can cover your head and face so that you are not burnt. So otherwise, if you don't fold your, if you just keep wearing your robes and put up on your head, cover your head just like that, I feel that you are feeling very hot. And this is what you should do with regard to your protecting yourself from the sun. This is a verse of dedication. Yeah.